My name is Claire Harper, and once I went to prison for the man I loved. When Daniel made a mistake that could have destroyed his life, I did what any devoted wife would do. I took the blame. I stood in court, confessed to a crime I didn't commit, and promised myself he'd wait for me. But when I finally walked out of those prison gates 6 years later, he wasn't waiting. He was standing at the altar marrying my sister. They called it love. I called it betrayal. And the world moved on, thinking the story ended there. But it didn't. Because what came after their wedding, what I did after, was something no one saw coming. This isn't just a story about heartbreak. It's a story about secrets, revenge, and how far love can go before it turns into something darker. If this is your first time hearing my story, make sure you hit the subscribe button, turn on the notification bell, and stay with me until the end. Because I'm about to take you back to where it all began, to the day I met Daniel Harper, and to the moment love became a crime. When people talk about love, they never mention how dangerous it can be. They talk about butterflies, candlelit dinners, and slow dances in the kitchen. But they never talk about how love can blind you, bind you, and bury you alive. When I met Daniel Harper, I was 23, and life felt like a promise waiting to be fulfilled. He was the kind of man every woman in law school whispered about. Sharp, confident, with a smile that made you forget your own name. I was focused, disciplined, the serious one. And maybe that's why he noticed me. He walked up to me after a lecture one rainy afternoon, holding out his umbrella and saying, "You look like you'd rather get struck by lightning than ask for help." That line, stupid, charming, and utterly Daniel, was the beginning of everything. We became inseparable. He taught me to loosen up. I taught him to plan ahead. When we married 2 years later, everyone said we were the perfect balance, logic and passion, calm and chaos. My parents adored him. My younger sister Emily practically worshipped him. She was 19 then, bright-eyed and naive, always hanging around our apartment claiming she loved how we loved. I should have known. Our wedding photos looked like a magazine spread. Daniel in his tailored black suit, me in lace and laughter, and Emily right behind us, her hand resting a little too comfortably on his shoulder. Everyone saw it as sisterly affection. I dismissed the flicker of discomfort that crossed Daniel's face when she hugged him. I thought it was my imagination. For years, everything was golden. We built a home filled with dreams, his architectural models, my law books, our half-finished coffee cups on the kitchen counter. When people asked if I was happy, I always said yes. But in hindsight, I wasn't happy. I was hypnotized. Because behind that perfect beginning was something quietly rotting, something I couldn't yet see. And when I finally did, it was already too late. The first cracks in our picture-perfect life didn't come with a bang. They came as whispers. Tiny, almost invisible shifts. Daniel's architectural firm started small, designing suburban homes and boutique stores. I admired his ambition. He wanted to build skyscrapers before he turned 35. We lived in a rented townhouse just outside Seattle, one of those cozy neighborhoods where every lawn looked like it had been photoshopped. On the outside, we were the dream couple. Inside, I was quietly drowning in bills, and Daniel was quietly pretending everything was fine. He hated when I offered help. "You're a lawyer, Claire, not my accountant," he'd say, flashing that disarming grin. But I saw the red letters in his inbox, the unpaid invoices, the sleepless nights. He'd wake up at 3 a.m., staring at his laptop, whispering to himself like he was negotiating with ghosts. When my firm offered me a promotion in another city, Daniel convinced me to decline it. "It's just a setback, babe. Things will change soon. I need you here." So I stayed, believing love meant sacrifice. Emily started visiting more often. She'd drop by unannounced with takeout or bottles of wine, her perfume always lingering long after she left. She was thriving. New job, new car, new confidence. "You guys are my favorite couple," she'd say, curling up on our couch, too comfortable, too familiar. Then came the weekend I'll never forget. Daniel told me he was flying to Portland for a business pitch. That night, I woke to a phone vibrating on his desk. His second phone, the one I didn't know existed until that moment. A message glowed on the screen. Made it home safe. Same time next week? E. I stared at it until the letters blurred. My mind went blank. No tears, no anger, just a quiet numbness that chilled me to the bone. When he came home, I didn't confront him. I cooked dinner, I smiled, I laughed at his jokes. Because if I had spoken then, maybe the truth would have come out, and maybe I would have left. But I didn't. I chose silence. And that silence became the rope he would later hang me with. It was raining the night Daniel called. Not a gentle drizzle, the kind of storm that swallows sound and bends trees, where the sky looks angry and alive. I remember because I'd been sitting by the window, watching lightning crawl across the horizon when my phone rang. The screen flashed Daniel. His voice was trembling. The calm, confident Daniel I knew was gone. Claire, I need you. Please, don't ask questions, just come. 20 minutes later, I was driving through the storm, headlights cutting through sheets of rain, my heart hammering against my ribs. When I found him, he was standing beside his car on a deserted road, soaked, shaking, his hands covered in something dark. Blood. He didn't look at me when he spoke. I didn't mean to. He came out of nowhere. I swear to God, Claire, I didn't mean to. The man lay a few feet away, motionless. His head had hit a rock. No breath, no sound. Just rainwater washing away the blood. My mind went into autopilot. Years of studying law, understanding evidence, reaction time, the difference between guilt and proof. I knew what this meant. If we called the police, Daniel would go to jail. Reckless driving, manslaughter, maybe worse. His career, his reputation, everything gone. So I made a choice. I told him to get in the car and go home. I dragged the body off the road, covered it with Daniel's jacket, and waited until I could barely see it through the rain. I drove his car to a nearby bridge, left it there, and walked home barefoot in the dark. When Daniel saw me at the door, shivering, drenched, silent, he broke down, saying, "You saved my life." I didn't realize in that moment that I'd just destroyed mine. That night, we lay in bed, neither of us sleeping. He held my hand like he was afraid I'd disappear. But when he finally drifted off, I turned to look at him. Really look. And for the first time since I met Daniel Harper, I didn't see love. I saw a stranger. And I saw a secret he wasn't done keeping. When the police came 3 days later, I was almost relieved. For 72 hours, I'd lived inside a nightmare. Daniel pacing the house, avoiding my eyes, snapping at every sound. I thought we'd gotten away with it. Then came the knock at the door. 2 officers. Calm, polite, devastating. "Mrs. Harper, we have reason to believe you were involved in the fatal accident on Greenvale Road last Friday." Daniel froze. My pulse went silent. They said they found his jacket near the scene, the one I used to cover the body. I could have told the truth right then, that Daniel was the driver, that I was just the cleanup crew in a storm of panic and love. But instead, I said the words that would cage me for years. It was me. The lie came out smoother than I expected. Maybe because a part of me wanted to protect him, or maybe because I wanted to believe the man I married was worth saving. Daniel's eyes widened like he hadn't expected it. Then he did something I'll never forget. He squeezed my hand and whispered, "Thank you." Not don't, not why, just thank you. The trial that followed became a media circus. The devoted wife who confessed. "Love or madness," headlines screamed my name, my face, my shame. Daniel stood beside me, crying during interviews, saying I was too selfless for her own good. He played the grieving husband perfectly. The world adored him. And then there was Emily, my sweet, supportive sister who sat through every hearing, holding Daniel's hand, wiping his tears, whispering comfort when I wasn't looking. The same Emily who'd sworn she believed in me, who told me love conquers all. On the day of sentencing, The judge called me a woman of misguided loyalty. 10 years. I didn't cry. Daniel did. Loud, dramatic sobs. When they led me away, I looked back at him through the crowd. For a second, I thought I saw guilt. But maybe it was relief. Because what I didn't know was that as I walked into prison that day, Daniel and Emily were already walking into something else. Something called freedom. They say prison changes people. They never say it can also reveal them. When those metal doors closed behind me for the first time, I wasn't thinking about justice or punishment. I was thinking about Daniel, the man I'd loved enough to die for, or worse, live for behind bars. The cell was small, gray walls, a single window that didn't open, a bed that creaked when you breathed too hard. But compared to the silence Daniel left me with, it was almost peaceful. At first, I wrote to him every week, long letters filled with hope and devotion. I miss you. Don't give up on us. We'll start over when I'm out. I poured my soul into envelopes that were never returned. Months turned to years. His letters came less and less, from weekly to monthly, then to nothing at all. I told myself he was busy, grieving, rebuilding. I told myself love survives distance. I told myself a lot of things. Then one afternoon, a guard, a kind woman named Rosa, stopped by my cell. She hesitated before speaking. "You still writing those letters?" I nodded. She sighed. "Honey, he's not coming back. I've seen his name in the papers. He's doing fine. Really fine." That night, I lay awake, staring at the ceiling, Rosa's words echoing in my head. He's doing fine. In the weeks that followed, I noticed something strange. Magazines brought in by the other inmates, lifestyle pages, glossy covers, all showed Daniel's name. Harper Designs wins National Award. Architect Daniel Harper builds for the future. His smile was everywhere. His interviews were full of charm. But what caught me off guard wasn't him. It was the woman standing beside him in one of the photos. Emily, my sister. Her hand on his shoulder, her face turned toward him in that familiar, too comfortable way. The caption read, "Fashion designer Emily Brooks spotted with architect Daniel Harper at a charity gala." The world blurred for a moment. I dropped the magazine. My body trembled, not from anger, but from the sharp, clean sound of truth finally breaking through denial. That night, I burned Daniel's letters one by one. And as the smoke filled the air, I whispered, "You may have taken my freedom, Daniel, but I'm still alive." And something deep inside me, something quiet and dangerous, finally woke up. The day I walked out of prison, the air felt strange, too clean, too bright, too free. For 6 years, I'd dreamed of sunlight without bars. But standing there with my release papers in hand, I realized I had nowhere to go. My old home, my career, my marriage, all ghosts now. Still, I carried one thing that had survived the storm, my curiosity. The first thing I did was go online. I'd barely touched a computer in years and the world had changed, but not as much as Daniel. His name filled search results like a brand. Harper Designs International, award-winning architect, philanthropist, family man. I clicked on an image and froze. It was a wedding photo. Daniel in a dark suit, smiling that same smile I once thought belonged to me. Standing beside him, radiant in white, was Emily, my sister. For a moment, I thought it was a mistake, maybe an article error. But no, there it was, dated 2 years ago. Architect Daniel Harper marries fashion designer Emily Brooks. A love that endured scandal and time. The words twisted like a knife. Endured scandal. I was the scandal, and they, my husband and my sister, had endured me. I didn't cry. I didn't scream. I laughed. A hollow, bitter laugh that startled even me, because in that moment, the irony of it all wasn't lost. I'd gone to prison to protect Daniel from ruin, and he'd found happiness in my absence. But the more I read, the stranger it became. A photo of their company launch showed Emily standing beside Daniel, holding a gold plaque that read, "In memory of the late journalist Thomas Green." That name. I knew that name. It was the man Daniel hit that night. The man I thought was a stranger. I dug deeper. Old news archives, blogs, reports. Thomas Green wasn't random. He was an investigative journalist. He'd been writing an exposé on corruption in the fashion industry. Emily's industry. My blood ran cold. The night of the accident, Daniel hadn't just been driving randomly through a storm. He'd been driving Emily's car. Meeting her. Protecting her. It wasn't my husband's accident. It was my sister's cover-up. And I was the fool who took their sin and wore it like loyalty. That night, I stood by my small motel window, staring at the city lights I once dreamed under. And for the first time since I said, "I do," I whispered a promise to myself. Not of love, not of forgiveness, but of justice. I returned to Seattle like a ghost no one expected to see again. No headlines, no welcome home. Just me, a suitcase, and 6 years of silence wrapped around my heart like armor. Daniel and Emily lived in a glass mansion on the hill now, all steel, mirrors, and money. I watched it from a distance, standing across the street on a cold morning as cars glided in and out through the automated gates. The press called them the golden couple. I called them unfinished business. I didn't confront them immediately. I wanted to understand how they'd built their empire on my ashes, so I started quietly. I rented a small apartment under another name. Claire Harper was legally dead. Her death certificate had been filed by Daniel during my sentence, citing identity complications. I smiled when I saw that. He'd buried me already. Perfect. I started visiting places from our past. The architecture firm, the coffee shop where he'd proposed, the courthouse where I'd been sentenced. People looked at me like they were seeing a ghost. Some whispered, others avoided me. But one person didn't. A young journalist named Liam Green. He introduced himself at the cafe one afternoon. "You don't know me," he said softly. "But you knew my father, Thomas Green." I froze. The man Daniel and Emily had killed. Liam had been only 16 when his father died. Now he was 22, chasing the story his father never finished. He believed Thomas's death was no accident, and when I told him my name, his eyes widened. "You're her, the wife who confessed." We became an uneasy alliance, two ghosts chasing truth. Through Liam, I learned everything Daniel had done while I was locked away. He'd forged financial records, sold stolen designs, and used Emily's company as a laundering front. Together, they had turned my loyalty into their capital. But the most shocking detail came one night when Liam handed me a sealed envelope. "I think you should see this," he said. It was an old police report, dated the night of the accident. The statement read, "Witness observed a woman in a red coat exiting the passenger side before the crash." I remembered that coat. Emily's. She was there. That night, my sister was in the car. The room spun. For 6 years, I had hated Daniel for betrayal. But Emily was the hand that held the match. And now, I knew exactly where to burn. Revenge is never loud at first. It whispers. It hides in patience, in planning, in the stillness before the strike. For weeks, I studied Daniel and Emily like a detective dissecting a case. Their mansion was more than a home. It was a fortress of lies built on my sacrifice. Emily ran her fashion empire, Aline Studios, from a glass office downtown, giving interviews about women's empowerment while wearing the blood money of a buried journalist. Daniel, now a media darling, lectured on second chances. The irony was enough to make me sick. Liam helped me gather everything we needed: financial records, public filings, leaked correspondence. He was clever, cautious, driven not just by revenge, but by a need to finish his father's story. We spent long nights in my apartment surrounded by files, wine bottles, and anger. They think they're untouchable, I said once, staring at Daniel's smiling face on my laptop. They will be, Liam replied, until someone reminds them the dead don't stay buried. Our first move was to use their pride against them. Daniel was scheduled to receive an award for Architect of the Year at a gala streamed live across the country. The perfect stage. We sent anonymous documents to key journalists. Proof of tax evasion, embezzlement, fraud. But we held the worst for last. Photos, security footage, and the forensic re-examination of the crash that killed Thomas Green. Liam had contacts in the department. It was enough to reopen the case quietly. Then, under a pseudonym, I wrote my own confession. Not the one the courts had heard, but the truth. It began with, I once went to prison for a man I loved. He wasn't worth the bars. We uploaded it to an independent news blog, The Wife Who Took the Fall. Within hours, it went viral. People devoured it. Social media exploded. The perfect couple became a trending topic for all the wrong reasons. And just like that, Daniel and Emily's golden empire began to crack. But there was one twist I hadn't prepared for, one that would change everything again. That night as I walked home, a black car pulled up beside me. The window rolled down. Daniel's voice, calm, low, familiar, floated through the rain. Hello, Claire. We need to talk.
The night Daniel found me, the city was soaked in rain again, just like the night that started it all. He stepped out of the car in the charcoal coat, perfectly pressed, the same charming mask he wore the day I swore to love him. Only now I could see the cracks behind it. Claire, he said softly, you shouldn't have come back. I smiled. Neither should you. We met in a cafe a few blocks away. Neutral ground, crowded enough to keep us civil. He ordered black coffee. I didn't touch mine. He started talking fast, like a man rehearsing for an audience. You think you know the truth, but you don't. Emily, she wasn't supposed to be there that night. It was an accident, Claire. Everything that happened was an accident. An accident? I said. Marrying my sister was an accident, too? For the first time, his composure faltered. You don't understand what she's capable of. But I did. I'd spent years understanding it. Before I could respond, my phone buzzed. A message from Liam. Breaking news, the gala has been interrupted. Police raid ongoing. Daniel's face drained of color. He stood abruptly, chair scraping. What did you do? Outside, sirens cut through the night. By morning, every network in the country carried the same headline. The Harpers under investigation for fraud, cover-up, and possible involvement in journalists' death. The police raided their company offices, seizing files and devices. Emily was photographed screaming at reporters, mascara streaking down her face. A far cry from the woman who once smiled beside Daniel on magazine covers. He tried to deny everything, to cast himself as another victim of his wife's ambition. But the documents Liam and I released told another story. Bank transfers, hidden accounts, a forged death certificate. Mine. When I watched him being led away in handcuffs, something strange happened. I didn't feel joy. I didn't feel triumph. I felt nothing. Emily broke first. She confessed to blackmailing Daniel with evidence from the night of the crash. She'd convinced him to take the blame publicly to protect her fashion empire, then turned the marriage into business leverage. He'd married his accomplice and ended up her hostage. They both destroyed each other, just as I'd planned. Not with bullets or blood, but with truth. Weeks later, I sat in the same courtroom where I'd once been sentenced, now watching from the gallery. Daniel looked at me as they read his verdict. Fraud, obstruction, falsifying documents. Our eyes met. For a moment, I saw the man I once loved, buried beneath the ruin. And then he looked away. like a coward staring at a ghost. The gavel struck. Justice, cold, quiet, and final, echoed through the room. Justice is supposed to feel clean. People imagine it as a sunrise, bright, redemptive, freeing. But in reality, it's gray, cold, heavy. It doesn't wash you, it stays with you. Daniel was sentenced to 14 years, Emily to 9. The media called it the Harper scandal, love, lies, and blood. They debated who was worse, the cheating husband, the deceitful sister, or the woman who came back from the dead to destroy them both. But no one ever asked how it felt to be all three. After the trial, I moved to a small coastal town in Maine, quiet, empty, anonymous. I took a job at a bookstore where no one recognized my name. Some nights I'd catch people flipping through tabloids with Daniel's face on the cover, and I'd walk away before they noticed me. They saw a headline. I saw a history. Liam visited me once. He'd published the story under his father's name, The Last Truth of Thomas Green. It exposed everything: the crash, the cover-up, the manipulation. His eyes carried peace, and I envied him for it. "Does it feel better now?" he asked. I smiled faintly. Better? Number, but quieter. Before he left, he handed me a small envelope. Inside was a photo: me, Daniel, and Emily at my wedding. 3 smiles, perfectly staged. He said, "You should keep it, as proof you survived them." I didn't tell him that survival isn't always the same as living. Months later, I received a letter from prison. Daniel's handwriting, still neat, still deliberate. It read, "I don't expect forgiveness, but I hope you understand. I loved you, Claire, just not enough to lose everything." I stared at that line for a long time. Then I tore the letter in half and threw it into the sea. Love had been my first prison. Loyalty was my second. But truth? Truth was my release. As I watched the waves carry away the fragments of his words, I realized something I hadn't before. I didn't destroy Daniel and Emily. They destroyed themselves the moment they mistook my silence for weakness. I turned and walked back toward the shore, the wind whipping through my hair, the past finally dissolving behind me. And in that quiet moment, I whispered to the sea, not as a curse, but as a confession. I went to prison for love. They went to prison for greed. Now we're all finally free.